Our committee, your committee, the United States National Committee of the International Council of Monuments and Sites, holds a special place in the creation and implementation of the World Heritage Convention. That's a legacy that we're striving to hold, nurture, and grow. Over the past 18 months, because of you, the members, because of our really stellar board and advisory committee, I think that we can say we have made progress beyond that which we had reasonable hope for. My name is Douglas Gomer, and it's my honor to be president of our national committee, but our success, our contributions completely depend upon you. And there will be more opportunities for many of you to become involved in the programs and projects that will move us toward a new heritage, one that is relevant to addressing the global challenges to humanity that have become all too apparent in recent years. Now, this today is our first annual virtual meeting. So we're recording some of this. We'll be live and recording intermittently. Recording to better fit with the limited time frames that we've all become very familiar with. It's the new normal. Today's meeting, importantly, will include votes on bylaws and 3 proposed new board members. So please do remember that only dues-paying members can vote. This meeting will also provide a glimpse into the progress that Usc ICOMOS has made in the past year toward both achieving long-standing and some very new organizational goals and the plans that we've developed for this in 2022. In that regard, you will notice that we have organized the meetings around themes: Indigenous rights and World Heritage, social justice and World Heritage advocacy, and emerging heritage professionals. Now with that, let's move into the meeting. The first order of business is a membership vote on updated bylaws for the United States National Committee of the International Council of Monuments and Sites. We refer to it frequently as Usc Communities Accomplishments. I'll remind you that our organization has as its prime objective the implementation of the World Heritage Convention. Now, these bylaws have been approved by the Usc Communities Board of Trustees, but must be approved by the membership to take effect. Members have been given access to the proposed changes via email calling for this vote. A motion to adopt the revised bylaws has been made by board member Kate Perry and has been seconded by board member Ella Delage. And I can say, and with absolute certainty, both of these people have closely examined the existing bylaws and have reviewed the proposed changes. All right, now we're going to have a membership poll on this issue. We're going to vote on the bylaws, the adoption of the bylaws, and you see it just pop up right there. The poll that's visible on your screen right now provides for 3 alternate options, and as you can see, it's yay, nay, and abstain. So if you would please, in the next 60 seconds, go ahead and vote yay, nay, or abstain on the adoption of the bylaws, our new written bylaws. I think Nicole is, or Victoria is keeping time. And we have the results from Victoria, and it's unanimous. We have 28 ayes, that is, absolutely no nays, and 5 abstentions, probably because they didn't have a good chance to look at the bylaws. Anyway, I'm pleased to say that the updated bylaws have been approved. And listen, I want to send my very special thanks to advisory committee member John Fowler, who I'm sure everybody knows. He took the lead in revising the bylaws. It was quite an undertaking. He had to look at all of the previous bylaws, iterations of the bylaws. And he was ably assisted in this by Kate Perry and Emily Choi. So thank you for that vote. And we move ahead with new bylaws. Congratulations, everyone. The next vote will be on our new board members. And we are so pleased to have such a distinguished slate. All members of Usc Communities have been sent information about these three candidates that were put forward by the nominating committee. Now, since there are more than 3 vacant seats on the Board of Trustees, all of them can be elected. So we'll vote on all of them at once. And we're very fortunate to present our distinguished slates of candidates. And you've probably heard of all of them. First of all, Steve Farnath, and just a terrific human being, also a staunch supporter of Usc Communities, president and owner of a highly respected architectural firm in San Francisco. I have to thank him. He was enormously helpful when we held our last in-person annual conference and symposium in that city, beautiful city, and brings a regional perspective that will greatly benefit Usc Communities. Next slide, please. This would be the next slide. And I'm sure, I would say everybody recognizes this gentleman, the former National Park Service Director, Robert G. Stanton. His accomplishments as director of the National Park Service were tremendous. And notably, they included an emphasis on diversifying heritage as a means of improving social justice. Took the forefront in that. Next slide, please. Professor Charles Mcseva, University of Colorado, Denver. Charles is an amazing guy, a world-renowned expert in early hominid evolution. If you're a paleoanthropologist, you know about Charles. He was born in Tanzania. He's actively engaged in cutting-edge research in East Africa. And in doing this, he brings together students from the US and Africa. He's also a very vocal advocate for Indigenous heritage voices, both in the United States and Africa. So he emphasizes this in the classes that he teaches for the University of Colorado, but he also vocally advocates for this in Africa itself. So again, I'm going to ask that we vote on all 3 candidates collectively. So let's see, where's our voting? There it is, that beautiful device. Your choices are obviously yay, nay, or abstain, and we're voting on all 3 at once. And we should start the 60 seconds now. We have a tremendous board. I'll just take this opportunity while you're casting your vote, but I enjoy working with every one of them, and every one of them is so distinguished and so intelligent and so hardworking. I doubt that there's ever been a board of trustees for any nonprofit that has worked as hard as our board. So we're pleased to bring these 3 new people on. All right, so the results are in. 33 yeas. And that is it. So we have our 3 new board members, and I and the rest of the board, and I'm sure all the members are looking forward tremendously with interacting, talking with them, working with them. So thank you for that vote. And I think we have a video now. In the segments that follow, you will hear from other Usc Communities Board of Trustees members and others who will talk about some of our activities and accomplishments with emphasis on creating a new heritage, a heritage that is inclusive and that provides a usable past, a heritage that can be used to develop solutions to the social and cultural problems that have overtaken us on both a national and global level. I will mention a few of our Usc Communities accomplishments here. We are now in a position of physical stability and are within reach of developing the financial resources and endowment that will ensure the institutional stability of Usc ICOMOS far into the future. And for this, we extend our most profound thanks to U.S. ICOMOS fellow Ronald Fleming, who in 2020 provided a $200,000 match grant. The generosity of board members and the efforts of board members to alert donors to this unprecedented opportunity allowed us to reach our goal. The $200,000 raised by these efforts was indeed matched by Ron, enhancing our financial standing by $400,000. This year, U.S. ICOMOS was provided a $1 million grant by the Mellon Foundation to develop a toolkit for use by those who are charged with making decisions about the fate of monuments associated with oppression. We have recently hired a dynamic and quite gracious program director for this project, Sakina Moore, who you will soon meet. We're in the process of interviewing people for other positions. We are also establishing an advisory committee for the project that will include those who have been directly involved in monument controversies and those who are thought leaders on these issues. The Monuments Project can be thought of as an outgrowth of the many webinars that we have held on a monthly basis for the last 18 months that deal not only with monuments per se, but with the temporal and cultural contexts in which they were created. A few other items. In addition to revising our bylaws this year, we also developed a strategic plan. We have significantly grown our administrative capacity by hiring several new staff members who will focus on developing programs and projects that will draw more attention and support to our organization. And we're working hard to diversify our networks, specifically our board, by welcoming members of all races, genders, etc., thus widening our perspectives. We plan to introduce regional chapters, starting with a prototype in the West. We are working with the Underground Railroad Network to Freedom to transform it, and we have done this last year, into an international Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. And in doing so, we have enhanced relations with many other national committees, including those in Canada and Latin America and scholars in Europe who have studied these issues. There is much more. You will now hear from board members, staff, and friends. Our U.S. ICOMOS Vice President, Destry Jarvis, to whom I extend my profound thanks. He's worked so hard to bring so many of these programs and projects to fruition. Destry will begin with our efforts to acknowledge and advocate for Indigenous rights and World Heritage, something he feels very, very strongly about. I think we all do. So Destry, over to you.
Thank you, Doug. Good afternoon, everyone. At our celebration of World Heritage in 2020, then Congresswoman Deb Haaland, who chaired the Subcommittee on National Parks and Public Lands, challenged us to boldly embrace justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion as it relates to the indigenous cultural values of World Heritage sites. Over the past year, we've begun to do that. Now, Department of Interior Secretary Deb Haaland is in a position to lead the country boldly again into this new era of recognition and embrace of the rights of Indigenous people. Just in the past month, President Biden and Secretary Haaland have issued official orders calling on all agencies to fulfill trust responsibilities to Indian tribes in the stewardship of federal lands, to make full use of traditional ecological knowledge in federal decision-making, to strengthen interagency coordination for the protection of sacred sites, and to protect tribal treaty rights to natural and cultural resources. These actions were long overdue, and U.S. ICOMOS will support them. Beginning in 2020 and continuing through this year, we undertook a series of webinars and public policy activities with the intent of bringing greater emphasis and public awareness of the significant and extensive cultural values of U.S. World Heritage sites that have been inscribed solely for their natural values. We intend to secure official federal recognition of and compliance with the rights of Native American tribes, Indigenous Alaskans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders across the federal landscape for World Heritage sites and beyond. Our goal is driven both by domestic law and regulations, as well as by the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. 19 of the 24 US World Heritage sites are national parks. 12 of these 19 are inscribed on the World Heritage List as natural areas. However, every one of these has existing cultural ties to Indigenous people that are not recognized by the World Heritage inscription and barely recognized by the Park Service. For many tribes, these landscapes were their ancestral homelands and/or include various sacred sites and provide sources of food, clothing, and shelter and other aspects of Indigenous lifeways. There are at least 6 elements of US domestic law and policy that are unique to Indigenous people, but which today are not fully or effectively adhered to. These include treaty rights. Many Indigenous tribes still exercise considerable rights under the terms of their treaties, often signed in the 19th century, and especially focused on access to former tribal homelands for gathering, fishing, and hunting. There are numerous treaties signed by the US Army and various tribes that were never ratified by Congress as a betrayal of trust and a continuation of deceit. Sovereignty is much talked about in the tribal community and in federal law and policy. But to date, it has not been interpreted as providing tribes with assurance that their decisions will be adhered to by the federal government. Many federal laws require consultation with tribes, but most often it comes too little and too late, especially where federal land management agencies are concerned. And it does not include any element of certainty that tribal views will be adhered to. For compliance purposes with laws like the National Environmental Policy Act, the National Historic Preservation Act, the Archaeological Resource Protection Act, and the Native American Graves Repatriation Protection Act, federal land managers must adhere to these laws, and they automatically intend to trigger tribal consultation. But too often, this consultation does not occur early enough or often enough in the process, sometimes even waiting for the decision maker to sign the record of decision before commencing consultation. For NEPA, that consultation should begin in the scoping phase and continue through the alternative selection process, the preferred alternative choice, and again before the agency signs the record of decision. Leaders of the 4 federal public land agencies, National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, Bureau of Land and Management, and U.S. Forest Service, should immediately commence consultation with culturally affiliated tribes for express protection of sacred sites as identified by the tribes themselves. Another area that so far goes beyond even the orders that President Biden and Secretary Haaland have issued deals with the opportunity for co-management between the federal land manager and the culturally affiliated tribes. And there are many examples of where this opportunity presents itself. Certainly with Chaco, Culture, National Historic Park, and World Heritage Site, both for the National Park Service and the Bureau of Land Management, who administer lands in that World Heritage Site, they should reach out immediately to the All Pueblo Tribal Council to engage them effectively in cooperative management of this important World Heritage Site. Similarly, with the Black Hills and the Sioux Nation, the Bears Ears and the Navajo, as well as Pueblo. You know, the Fish and Wildlife Service has gotten out ahead of the others by already entering into a co-management agreement for the National Bison Range with the Salish Kootenai people. And there are dozens of other examples where this is possible. Beyond World Heritage sites, I think there are plenty of examples across the national park system, probably in the order of 20 units that are specifically set aside for their cultural values, not battlefields, but sites of native culture that could easily be co-managed or perhaps fully managed by the culturally affiliated tribe. Within the numbers of World Heritage sites, particularly the natural area inscriptions, there are culturally affiliated tribes: Everglades, Glacier, Grand Canyon, Great Smoky Mountains, Olympic, Redwood, Wrangell, St. Elias, Glacier Bay, Yellowstone, and Yosemite, each of which has significant opportunities for co-management. You know, at Glacier National Park last year, when we did our webinar, the now recently retired superintendent, Jeff Mao, has put tremendous efforts behind both engaging the tribe with the management of Chief Mountain. The park boundary bisects this sacred site with the reservation boundary, and also with a significant bison restoration project jointly between the park and tribe. There are many other wonderful examples that could be pursued, and I assure you, as members of ICOMOS, our board and staff, that we'll be pursuing those. Thank you very much for your time today. I want to proceed now to introduce to you all our newly hired director, project director of the Mellon Monuments of Oppression grant, Sakina Moore. We are all tremendously impressed with her hitting the ground running, coming in well qualified, and projecting a very positive, effective, and well-organized image as we begin this process. Sakina?
Good afternoon, and it is a pleasure to join you here today for the 2021 annual meeting of Usc ICOMOS. For this presentation, I'm going to share with you current programming with regards to social justice and World Heritage. My name is Sakina Moore, and I'm the program director of the Monuments Toolkit. During this presentation, I'm going to share with you the purpose of the Monuments Toolkit and how it came to be. Before I explain and share with you the purpose of the Monuments Toolkit, I wanted to talk about monuments of oppression and what they are. We define monuments of oppression as any monument constructed to purposefully perpetuate fear, inaccurate tellings of history, racism, xenophobia, and any monuments that communities have determined to be oppressive or harmful to their communities. One such example are the Confederate Monuments and the narrative of the lost cause. One might believe that these monuments came into existence after the Civil War. However, this narrative is not true. Most of these monuments were erected around the turn of the 20th century and during the Civil Rights Movement in order to intimidate Blacks during periods when they asserted their rights as United States citizens. Although the conversation to address and remove the monuments have existed since its inception, the national discussion and outcry to remove the monuments were catapulted in recent years in the aftermath of major events such as the shooting at Mother Emanuel Baptist Church in 2015, when 9 Black churchgoers were murdered by a white supremacist, and in 2017, during the Unite the Right riots, where a white supremacist murdered and injured counter-protesters, and also in 2020, the murder of George Floyd. In response to the increased discussion regarding monuments of oppression, US ICOMOS hosted 3 social justice webinars. These webinars included provocative conversations with field experts on how to best address monuments of oppression. These webinars, entitled Confederate Monuments, Past, Present, and Future, U.S. Civil Rights Movement Sites and the World Heritage List, and Diversifying Heritage in the United States, were all webinars that continue the discussion of how to deal with these types of monuments, and then also how to have a more socially justice focused programming and how we want to and how to deal with monuments of oppression. These webinars included thought leaders, including elected officials, journalists, and scholars, such as William Bell, the former mayor of Birmingham, Alabama, Callie Holloway, Senior Director of the Make It Right Project, Dusty Jarvis, U.S. ICOMOS Board Vice President, Shantha Reddy, who's the Director of Intergovernmental and External Affairs of the U.S. Department of the Interior, and many others. As a result of these conversations, the Andrew Mellon Foundation awarded US ICOMOS a $1 million grant to develop a monuments toolkit. And we are very excited to share with you the purpose of the toolkit, and that is to be a resource to public policy makers and to community members who are grappling with how to address monuments of oppression. 2022 is going to be a very great year for this project. In 2022, we're going to be releasing a beta version of the Monuments Toolkit app, where a user will be able to tap a point on a map and be able to have a very robust case study, which features information about the monument, types of actions that are pending with regards to the monument, and be linked with other similar monuments. We also look forward to releasing engaging content and programming throughout the year. So the programming will include interviews with thought leaders with regards to monuments of oppression. And towards the end of 2022, we do look forward to presenting the preliminary findings at the US ICOMOS Annual Conference and Symposium. Stay tuned, and please definitely visit us at www.usicomos.org to keep up to date on the progress of this exciting project. Now you will hear from Tom Cassidy on World Heritage Advocacy.
Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be here. Again, my name is Tom Cassidy, and I wanted to give a few highlights of US ICOMOS work on World Heritage Advocacy. I think the first thing that I would like to emphasize was a significant statement by President Biden, Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland, and the Director of Bureau of Land Management in mid-November that announced the initiation of a major planning initiative to consider a 20-year withdrawal of the lands around Chaco Canyon from oil and gas development. Chaco Culture National Historical Park was designated in 1980, and then it was inscribed on the list of World Heritage several years in 1987, including lands outside of the park, so-called Chaco outliers. These are managed by the Bureau of Land Management and have very much been threatened by proposals that the Bureau of Land Management has considered for oil and gas development. So US ICOMOS and a whole host of advocacy organizations, including the local tribes, have been working hard to protect this area from oil and gas. And we feel that the decision of the administration was a major, major step forward. Another item that we're trying to do is to encourage the United States to pay its dues to UNESCO. The United States has not paid its dues since 2011. And under President Trump, we withdrew from UNESCO in 2018. We think it is only right that as US ICOMOS and all of our constituencies are working so hard to protect and to expand World Heritage sites in this country, that we owe the simple obligation of paying our dues. This is important also because although we have not paid our dues, nonetheless, the World Heritage Committee has continued to consider potential World Heritage sites, including, they announced recently that they would consider Ohio's monumental earthworks that's now on the tentative list. You will learn more about Ohio's monumental earthworks, which includes Hopewell National Historical Park, at a webinar early into next year. So what we have done most recently is we have sent a letter to the Senate Appropriations Committee urging them to have a waiver of the law that prohibits us from paying our dues in the pending appropriations bill. Next, I just wanted to let people know that the Cahokia World Heritage Site, which was established in the early 80s, protects or identifies lands at Cahokia, right near St. Louis, one of the, it's again, another terribly significant Native American site. And the state established the Cahokia Mounds State Historic Site a number of decades ago. And there is legislation pending in the Congress, bipartisan, and in both the House and Senate, that would create a national park in this area. And that is something that we hope to see action on in this next year. Finally, I wanted to just mention another long-term threat that we are dealing with at the San Juan World Heritage Site in Puerto Rico. Earlier this year, we had a symposium that focused on climate and World Heritage. But what we're finding at San Juan is we have really a double threat. We have threat of the deferred maintenance of the national park that is there. The deferred maintenance needs are growing at that park because there's a large, significant masonry structure. And for a long time, repairs to masonry structures have been a low priority for the National Park Service. We are working to elevate the significance of the repair of this masonry structure that is at the heart of this World Heritage Site. So those are a few of the things that we have been up to on behalf of US ICOMOS. And what I would like to do now is pass this over to Zoe Lung.
Hi everyone, my name is Zoe Lung. I chair the Emerging Professionals Network and the International Exchange Program Committee at US ICOMOS. I also lead the membership team at ICOMOS Emerging Professionals Working Group. Today it's my pleasure to give you some highlights of our activities this year. We are grateful to the leadership for supporting emerging professionals stepping into leadership roles and giving us lots of opportunities to grow. Today, my presentation will be divided into 3 parts. First, looking internationally at the ICOMOS EPWG, then the IEP, and lastly, the International Underground Railroad Project. I highlighted all the acronyms I'll be using in the next few minutes to get you familiarized with them. The ICOMOS EPWG is a relatively young organization started in 2017 and is run by EPs for EPs, with over 100 members around the world from 80 countries. And our goal is to contribute and make a difference through spearheading initiatives that spark new ideas and engagement opportunities with the international heritage and scientific communities. To give you a few examples, in April, I partnered with my African counterpart to organize a US-Africa intergenerational conversation on heritage and society in celebration of the International Day of Monuments and Sites. We assembled 2 generations of heritage professionals from each country and region to delve into the role of heritage in tackling societal challenges such as equity, diversity, and inclusion. More recently, the EPWG contributed to a number of major international events on climate change, especially with themes that looked specifically into the intersections between climate change, cultural heritage, and traditional or indigenous knowledge systems. In these discussions, the experts exchanged views on knowledge co-production, climate risks to heritage, and best practices in adaptive strategies, among other topics. Now I want to bring us back to the US and to our flagship program, the International Exchange Program, the IEP, which in the past 37 years had contributed to the international exchanges of ideas and people, a fundamental element of what US ICOMOS stands for. Every year, except for last year, we sent US interns to overseas hosts and host foreign interns in various US agencies and organizations. This year, we continued our program despite the pandemic, and this slide has all of the participants this year who have just graduated from the program, their home countries, and also their host organizations. Earlier this year, in July, Brian Young, our former IEP chair, who just stepped down having served in the capacity for 7 years, organized a webinar with alumni spanning 3 different decades to share their experiences and the impacts of the program on their professional and personal lives. Having participated in the program myself in 2014, I can attest to its life-changing impacts. Through the program, I've made incredible memories and meaningful connections, which have motivated me to stay involved in US ICOMOS. IEP is now accepting applications for interns and hosts for 2022. Let me now transition into a US ICOMOS EPN initiative that is ongoing, the International Underground Railroad Project. Early this year, the National Park Service reached out to US ICOMOS for a collaborative opportunity to expand the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom program to explore and highlight the international connections. September was the International Underground Railroad Month, and to kick it off, we rolled out a story map in coordination with our international and local partners. Through this project, we now have an ongoing database of international names, stories, and sites associated with the history of self-liberation that can be tied back to locations in the US. We're continuing to accept site and narrative submissions to include in the mapping project. Now I'd like to wrap up by asking you to visit our webpage here And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email us at IEP or the EPWG@usicomos.org address. Thank you, and I hope to stay in touch.
To those who have spoken, who have given so much this year of their time and enormous talents, I want you to know that it has been an honor and inspiration to work with you. Your passion for following the paths that we have set toward deploying what has long been a network of the most distinguished heritage professionals into the arena of social justice and the production of a new heritage is real. My friends and colleagues, my fellow members of the United States National Committee for the International Council on Monuments and Sites, thank you for your support. Thank you for being a part of an organization that has long been a world leader in the heritage conservation and management, and that is moving from that solid base to constructive engagement and partnerships with nations and cultures everywhere. I hope that you leave this meeting today invigorated by the progress that USC Communities has made in the past year and the possibilities that next year holds. So let's do this more often in 2022. However you celebrate them, happy holidays to you and yours.